right, good afternoon, or rather good morning. Welcome to another webcast from FACTS Institute for County Government. I'm Eric Poole. I'll be moderating this morning's presentation. And just by way of background, what we do at the Institute is to expand learning opportunities for our members across the state by offering in-person training and periodic webcasts on diverse issues important to counties. The webcasts are typically offered 1 to 2 times per month. Anyone that's enrolled in our certification program, either the CCC or CGE, can earn elective credit when participating in today's webcast, or when viewing previous ones that are archived on our website. So, as always, I want to thank the UF IFAS for being our partner and one of our primary sponsors. So, today's webcast, we've titled it "Transportation Funding and Gas Tax Indexing," but I think perhaps a better title would be a step-by-step review of local transportation funding. And the reason I say that is that one challenge that all counties struggle with, I think irrespective of their size or their revenue base, is how best to fund transportation. And so for those of you who took our financial management class or the roles and responsibilities class, we touched on both home rule revenue sources for transportation and those that are authorized by the state legislature. What those classes did not dive into, however, is the adequacy or the inadequacy of those funding sources. So that's what today's webcast is directed at doing. Our presenters will not only provide a specific policy alternative, one that I would call a new tool in the local toolbox. In fact, it's one that the state has used for over 20 years, but they will also discuss this policy alternative within a broader context of the existing transportation funding platform for counties. And so with that, we have 2 experts in the field, a couple friends of mine, folks I've known for a very long time. The first is Ramon Gavarrete. He is the Public Works Director in Alachua County. He's also the former Public Works Director in Highlands County. He is also a contributing instructor for the Institute for County Government. He is a past president of the Florida Association of County Engineers and Road Superintendents, and also past president of their national association, NACE. And so he comes with a whole wealth of information on this topic. And I've been working with Ramon on these types of issues for nearly 20 years. With him also is Chris Evers. Chris Evers has been involved in road building since 1996. Since 2011, he's been a representative for Pavement Tech. He's past president of the Florida chapter of the American Public Works Association, and is really an expert in this whole area of pavement preservation, which is important for counties when they are trying to extend the life of roads. And he actually helped found the Pavement Preservation Council in the state of Florida, and is often can be found up in Tallahassee, walking the halls of the Capitol, trying to inform lawmakers about transportation issues. And so I'm really excited about today's webcast. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to, I believe Chris is going to get us started. And if that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and minimize my screen to kind of save bandwidth. If anyone has questions during the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll keep track of those and we'll ask them during the end. So Chris, I think you're up, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, Ramon and I are going to go back and forth, and so it'll be fun. Let's get the presentation up. Ramon, you want me to bring it up, or you want to bring it up?
I'll bring it up.
I'll let you bring it up. So, yes, my name is Chris Evers, and I'm very active in the Public Works Association and Florida Pavement Preservation Council. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is really, everything around, how we fund our infrastructure. And I think one of the important things that we, want to get across is just how important, looking at not only the way we collect some of our gas taxes, but what the future has in store for us. We're in 2021. It's hard to even, fathom that to some degree. And so when you start looking at this, it's just, it's going to be a challenging next. I think this decade holds more challenges than most. So. All right. Yes, it is. You going to advance that?
Yes, I will.
Okay, perfect. All right. So this is a quote, long time quote. This is from Thomas McDonald, but it was not our wealth that made our highways possible. Rather, it was our highways that made our wealth possible. And that is actually very true in Florida. If you look at all of the industry that we count on in our for our state economy, much of it is very, very dependent on our infrastructure. So here's what we're going to be discussing as far as some of the things that we're going to look at. We're going to look at some of the key facts and myths, cost of inaction, really need to get our arms around that. Then Ramon is going to take us into how we're funding our roads specifically, and then kick it back to me for how we can go about fixing the funding issues. So key facts, myths, and cost of inaction. Here we go. Let's get into it. All right, we're going to cover really 4 myths, and these 4 myths are prevalent in both our state and around our country, really around the world. I hear lots of folks say, especially in Florida, we do have some good roads, but oh gosh, we don't need any more money. Our roads are in great condition. I also hear people talk about, well, inflation doesn't affect, road building as much as it does, say, the grocery store. And then, we also hear those things that, well, what can we do as a local government? Gas taxes are collected at the pump, and there's very little ability for local governments to have a say in that. And then lastly, we're going to, bust some myths around that gas tax increases translate to higher gas prices. Okay, so let's get into the key facts of the roadway network. This is really, key, and what we talk about a lot is look how many miles, Florida motorists drive. It's absolutely stunning when you look at it. The other thing is that we move a significant portion of that, just under $1 trillion worth of goods across these very roads that we depend on. They really are the lifeblood of our society, or the circulatory system for our economy here in Florida. And that design, construction, and maintenance provides a tremendous amount of jobs as well, over 200,000. And then you have all those folks that are completely dependent on our infrastructure. So how does that look, as far as, what these major roads, Ramon was telling me this looks like a road that could be in Alachua County. And I told him that actually the roads here, all roads that you see pictured are anonymous. So we're not going to, divulge where these roads are. So we're protecting the innocent, if you will. And the reason we say innocent is that many times our roadways are not in the good condition that we want them to be because we are short of funds. So we're going to talk about that. So whose roads are these anyway? They're the people's roads, but there's jurisdictional, characteristics to these. And so you hear the state highway system, and there's a tremendous amount of lane miles there. But just looking at who really owns these roads or who has jurisdiction over them, look at that. You look at the 88% of our Florida roadway network are local. And that's tremendous to think about. Look at those stats with the state and federal government. You think about interstates and all these things, but it really starts that first mile, last mile. Those that we talk about are local. So when we talk about fixing our most valuable fixed asset, we really do mean our most valuable fixed asset. It's not that we, love roads and we're in public works and that's the case. It really is, as far as the asset on the county's books, likely is that it's the most valuable. And certainly in the country, our surface infrastructure is the most valuable fixed asset, even over schools and the military assets. It's well into almost $3 trillion. So if you look at the needs and the funding gap, pretty significant. And those bottom dollars there, those are all in T's. Those are all in trillions. So we're talking about a substantial gap. Each of these individually are in the hundreds of billions. So it's a real issue. Okay, again, as Eric said earlier, who really pays for our roads? And we want to make this distinction. And the reason is that if we can make that distinction, sometimes we can get our arms around the effects and how we help our residents. We certainly want everybody to participate. And so the users of these pavements are the ones picking up the tab. And a lot of that is the over 100 million, visitors that we get every year. I know that this graph looks alarming. A lot of these are international travelers that couldn't come to Florida, that drop off. And keep in mind, if you take out, some of the really busy areas like in Orange County, we didn't have the big drop off that you might have thought. And so it's important to look at. But these visitors pay a significant portion, and these top industries that we have, like tourism, you see the guy with his carry-on on wheels there. Those are reliant on surface infrastructure. Now, when we talk about funding this fixed asset, it's critical to see that we're only paying half the tab. And the last time I tried to get away from, paying for half of my mortgage payment on my house, the bank got pretty cranky. We are, in a way, stealing money or at least borrowing money from the future and the future residents and future visitors of our fine state because we're not paying that full bill. And at some point that hurts the economy, it hurts the businesses, workers, and families. And we're going to show you some of those hidden costs that are borne by the users of our infrastructure. So let's get into the cost of inaction. What's next here? Cost of congestion. This is key. Look at, we picked out a few of these. This is from the trip analysis from Texas A&M, the Urban Mobility Study. And they found that depending on whether in Central Florida or Miami, these costs, Tampa Bay, these costs can be well over $1,000 per year. And that's the time you're spending in traffic because we have not been able to do the capacity projects or had that capital investment to widen these facilities. And so this is billions and billions of dollars. So how much do you value your time? I know I value it pretty highly. $20 an hour is low. That's what these numbers are counting on, but I think those are low. So let's look at the cost to the environment. When you're sitting in traffic and your car is idling, unless you have an electric vehicle, then you're talking about CO2 emissions. This is a picture I took on the 275 heading into Tampa. And you can see that we've got some smog issues. We don't have some of the same issues that you see in an LA or New York. But these are emissions that are, exceeding what we really want to see emitted because we're sitting in congestion. And if you tried to plant the number of trees, I thought this was fascinating. You look at the number of trees you need for Miami. It's greater than the rest of these cities combined as far as the number of acres of the city itself. So it's just unrealistic that we could ever catch up. So the other thing that we look at is the cost of repairs to your vehicles. These are repairs that residents pay because they hit a pothole, they damage their vehicle has to be maintained. And these are very real approaches. And the first approach of fixing roads that are in poor condition and not taking care of the roads that are in good condition exacerbates that. And in future segments, I hope that we can go into some of the differences between a preventative approach versus a worst first. But the fact is that roads that are in poor condition deteriorate faster, and they cause a lot of these distresses to vehicles as well. And then if we look at cost to citizens and health, bad roads are dangerous roads. And so whether we look at, some of these 2-lane rural roads that we have problems with, or stop and go congestion that causes rear end accidents, these translate into high cost of both medical and then loss of work and loss of life. If you look at it, we traditionally have over 1,000 deaths per year on our roadways, and that costs Florida over $3 billion. This is from the CDC. So how are we funding our roads? We're going to get into that. Ramon, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you get into it.
Thank you, Chris. Tough act to follow. And I hear an echo. You guys hear an echo also? No, okay. So we're going to continue now with how are we funding the roads. The first few slides is just a general subtopic. first I'm going to get into several that are not gas taxes. You know, the general ad valorem property tax. Some counties actually allocate what's called general funding towards transportation. Not all of them do. Some of them have the ability of having other type of funding. You can also do municipal services taxing units or municipal services benefit units. There's a slight difference between the two. Basically, benefit units, whoever is paying the assessment, you have to be benefiting from it. Or you can also do special assessments for specific items, like if somebody wants a road paved or chip sealed or something, the folks along that road can actually go ahead and establish a special assessment, and it will be the jurisdiction, either it's a county or a city, to actually establish that. All these are forms of basically non-ad valorem assessments that you can do to actually improve also your transportation system. So the next slide is, we're going to continue. There's also other sources that are not gas tax, which is you can have motor vehicle licenses fees, registration fees, title fees, dock stamps. You know, impact fees are imposed by the entities, also impact fees or multimodal transportation fees, MMTMs. Some jurisdiction might use revenue from red light cameras for transportation, although I do not find that there's many of those. There's also use of sales taxes and tolls. You know, it can be very complicated. So if anybody knows exactly how the gas tax distribution is in Florida, I'll challenge you all to try to explain to me this graph. Believe me, this is actually a simple graph compared to other graphs that I have seen as far as the process goes when it comes to providing the gas taxes ultimately to the local jurisdictions and what the uses are. So how are we funding the roads? This is actually a table that was actually included in the 2021 primer for the Florida Transportation Tax Sources. This is a very good publication if you want to actually search on your internet and find it. But basically, you can see all the taxes here: federal, state, and then locals. And we're going to get a little bit into the state and the local taxes. I'm not going to get into the federal taxes right now, although if we do have time, I do have some information about the transportation bill or bills that have been going right now up in DC. But that's not really the purpose of this presentation. But we're going to keep going now. When it comes to the state system, this is a pie chart as to all the millions of dollars that are coming into the state transportation system. You can see that it's not only fuel taxes, although fuel taxes is the majority, obviously. And you're going to see later that as the vehicles get more fuel efficiency and all that, these fuel taxes honestly are not really going up that much, especially for locals. For locals, the fuel taxes are basically flat, although we do see more vehicles on the roadway. And why? Because the vehicles are becoming more and more fuel efficient. So the state fuel tax, mostly any tax that is collected by the state for their system is to be used on the state system. They do have some exceptions by statute as to what can be allowed then to be used on the local system. And I'm going to get a little bit into that also. So here's some exceptions. It can be used many times for economic development. You're going to see some CDBG, community development grant programs out there, or economic development grant programs out there. Some of those transportation projects can be funded through the state tax, and those are grants of funded projects. They could be used to match federal aid funds, also grants. Those counties that are considered small counties, Highlands County was a small county and it still is by definition and by statute, can actually get access to small county road assistance programs or the county, or also the small county outreach program. And there's other grant programs with the county incentive program and the enhanced bridge programs that even larger counties then also can get in. This is just a data that I just got yesterday from Lorraine Moyle, who is the state local program coordinator from the Florida DOT. And this is basically an average of how much money is being allocated towards the SCRAP program, for example. It's $25 million a year going to the Small County Road Assistance Program. Each district will do that allocation accordingly to what they are told they get every year. And small counties have to apply. The Small County Grant Program is defined really for the population that was at the time in 1991. So there's some small counties, like for example, Highlands County, that unless that statute changes, they can have over 1 million people and they're still going to be eligible for the SCRAP program. I got a feeling that statute might change before it gets to that point, but that is by definition. SCOP is 60 million for counties and 9 million for cities. So that in recent years, the legislature actually allowed cities to actually apply for the SCOP, even though SCOP is Small County Outreach Program. They are allowed, some cities are allowed to apply for that. And this definition is if your county has 200,000 population or less. Is not defined by the census of 1991, like SCRAP is. SIGP and TRIP are actually designated for everybody. And those are the allocations that, as you can see, they're a little bit smaller than SCOP, but they are used mostly to fund also regional type projects. Now we're going to get into the local taxes. We have the 9 cents, the 1 through 6 local option, the 1 through 5 local option also. And then we also have discretionary sales, and small counties have the ability of also adopting a small county surtax. Not every county has done that. As you can see, only 27 counties in the whole state of Florida have adopted discretionary surtaxes. That includes the infrastructure surtax. And only 29, this is based on 2016, of the small have small county surtax. On the 9 cents, that was established in 1972 by the legislature, is by Florida statute. It's don't get fooled by 1 penny per gallon, because the honest truth is the state of Florida is the one that's going to distribute the gas tax to the locals, and they take a certain percentage off the top. And it's not the same for every penny. So you might want to try to make a calculation and you're never going to hit it. So you basically depend on whatever the state sends you, because they'll keep a distribution fee from up the top. So this is imposed by extraordinary vote of the commission or a countywide referendum. And currently 54 of the 67 counties have implemented the 9 cent fuel tax. What are the uses? And you can see this slide right now. You can use it basically for operations and maintenance, and most counties do that. That's most of our public works operations are funded through gas taxes. You can use it if you want to buy equipment or to buy structures, to do right-of-way drainage. Mostly everything that is operational and maintenance, you can use this gas tax. Obviously, you still have the authorization to spend some of these revenues to do match funds for grant programs through the state or the government or the federal government. The first local option tax is the 1 through 6 cents that was established in 1983. And again, it's a tax that is depending how many pennies or cents the local jurisdictions adopt. All 67 counties in Florida have adopted the first 1 through 6 local options fuel taxes. This can be used also for operations and maintenance, but in addition to that, it can be used also for other items. And you can see that list on the presentation. I'm not going to read them all, but very important, the 1 through 6 local option tax can also be used for operation and maintenance. Not everybody uses all their cents for O&M, but most counties do. And there is an exception. There is an exception where these funds cannot be used, though, for operational expenses of any infrastructure. So we have to be careful when we start allocating funding from the specific pennies as to what can be used for infrastructure, what can be used for operations and maintenance. So encouraged to actually read the statutes. And the other very good tool that I found over the years is the Florida Revenue Estimating Conference handbook that is produced by the Department of Revenue every year before the legislation. They haven't produced the next one yet because it usually comes around November of every year. So a lot of these uses that you're seeing here came directly from that Florida tax handbook. And the last local option is up to 5 cents. You don't have to adopt all 5 cents, although I strongly would encourage that you do. And you're gonna see later a slide where you have the untapped potential of gas taxes in the state of Florida. It is also also known as the Elms Nickel. Now, this specific tax, only 36 of 67 counties have adopted some kind of this local option tax. This tax cannot be used for operations and maintenance. This tax is to be used just to meet the requirements of your capital improvement element of your comp plan and for expenditures for construction of new roads. It is allowed to use in some instances, especially small counties, for reconstruction and resurfacing of existing paved roads. You have to be very specific and see what you can do and you cannot do when it comes to based on population. So, but very important, and some counties have gotten in trouble with this when all of a sudden they get audited. Routine maintenance of roads is not considered an authorized expenditure for the Elms Nickel. Now I'm going to give you a secret. Here's the secret. If you're doing in-house design or in-house construction of projects, and you're funding those projects through the local option tax, you can invoice your personnel and your labor and equipment that you're using that against those projects, and then you can replenish your portion of the transportation trust fund in your counties. So that is allowed, but you cannot directly just fund O&M through the 1 through 5 through the Elms Nickel. This is a chart that, you know, I don't know if you can see really a huge increase here in the gas taxes. And the reason is because there hasn't really been that much of an increase. For the locals, as you can see, it's been steady at 16 cents per gallon. This is the maximum gas taxes that locals can take advantage of. Granted, only 12 of those cents are enacted by the local jurisdiction. The other 4 are by state law, and they're established by state law. The federal government has not increased their gas tax in many, many years, and therefore you have been listening to all the gap that there is in the federal system. However, the state has indexed a large portion of their gas tax. And you can see the climb here, and it's although, oh yeah, you know, people can say, well, since 2012, 2021, it's only increased 3 pennies. Well, 3 pennies is a large amount of funding that the state of Florida has enjoyed due to the indexing of the gas tax. Once again, another graph as to how these taxes are allocated, federal, state, and local. And here's 2 tables. You see the state imposed fuel taxes, and these are what is being distributed to each local government. And then on the other side is the locally imposed. So it's all, I mean, obviously there's a direct correlation between the 2 graphs. The more that you have adopted, the more you're going to receive. But these taxes, most of these taxes, actually all of these local taxes are not indexed. So you're getting a fixed amount of money per penny that you are adopted, and it's not indexed. So now let's fix it and let's see how. So Chris, you're up.
Thank you, Ramon. All right, so let's get down to it. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the downstream risks to our gas taxes, and Ramon did a great job at teeing this up because we have some significant issues The last time I checked, our 67 counties cannot print money without getting in a substantial amount of trouble, right? So that is a problem. And so we are stuck with the Washington, D.C. monetary policy. And as you know, we went into kind of a printing mode. We needed to with COVID. And so we get kind of dragged along in that. And so that the same inflationary pressure is accelerating. I was asked by my wife to pick up some butter for a recipe over the weekend. And I came home, I guess, with the wrong brand. It was an organic butter. And I didn't pay attention, but apparently $5 for 2 sticks of organic butter. So we're having the same problems with our gas tax situation because it's not indexed. Everything that we use that gas tax revenue to buy is going up. Now, that's not the only problem we're going to get into, but we also have fuel efficiency going up. So that means less gallons of gas are sold, and therefore we're experiencing a revenue crunch there. The other thing is that electric vehicles currently aren't paying anything for the use of these roads. Now, these roads deteriorate whether we put gas in the vehicle or have a vehicle that operates without any fuel. And that's an issue. So these national policy changes also affect us. So whether we get into environmental constraints or slow things down because of permitting or any of these things. The other issue that's been very unfortunate of late is these supply chain challenges. And then certainly technology changes all the time as well. So we'll get into some of these specifics and we're going to talk about the counties, but you can see right here, the counties in green and white are very low tax. And then you've got the yellow, purple, blue, which are kind of in between. So that we're going to get to. Okay, let's go to that next slide. All right, here's what I was talking about. So fuel efficiency is at a record high in 2021. Now, we're not saying this is bad. Everybody wants to see vehicles that are more efficient, but this does affect our revenue. So if you look at it from 2005 to 2020, that's a 29% increase. And this trend, you can see it's a pretty substantial slope up. If it was a stock, we'd love to see that. But the fact is that's biting into our gas tax revenue. Okay, this next slide we have is another big issue, and it's our number 2 myth, if you'll remember, and it's confirmed. Construction inflation is also creating a substantial amount of pressure on our gas tax revenue, and one that we're not protecting ourselves against because it's not indexed. So this is the National Highway Construction Cost Index that USDOT puts out. I encourage you to follow this. We can send the link. It's actually in the presentation in the notes section. But over nearly that same 20-year period that we showed for fuel efficiency, that went up by 29%, our transportation costs went up 91%. Now, this is a major, major problem, and I call it a double whammy that we're getting hit with. So dry powder, now this is one of the things that we talk about. Myth number 3, if you'll remember, we're looking at what can locals do? Well, locals can tap some of these locally imposed fuel taxes. And that happens because we're able to go in there and look at something like the Elms Nickel and go in there and look at how we can potentially bring these numbers up. Or we can also look at indexing, which is what we're going to talk about here in a second. But if you look at this back in 2012, 2014, we actually had some counties come in and tap into that unimposed fuel taxes. And that's potentially a good way to do it. Now, I know no one likes to be targeted as, hey, we're raising people's taxes. But what we want to show is that there are lots of hidden costs that are well in excess of what any kind of gas tax increase would show to our residents. But also, we know that other people are paying these taxes, and we're going to show myth 4 here in just a second. So as we talk about, we look at that state portion of the money that is adjusted. That's from FDOT, and that's annual adjustments. We typically see that only go up about 0.3 of a penny, somewhere around in there. So But unfortunately, federal and local gas are not indexed. So I think, and what we've been talking about since 2016, Ramon and I and Eric, is that indexing local gas taxes should be a priority for upcoming legislative sessions. And that's where we get into where local government through FAC and League of Cities and all these, groups can help pressure and push legislators to look at this to help us fix this inequity. And if you look at this floor tax, and we look at 1997, we won't get into too much of the details, but I want you to look at the bottom of what this additional revenue has done. Now, this is not meaning that they're flush with cash, okay? What they're able to do, though, is get away from that crushing 91% increase that we've experienced and loss of purchasing power, and then that 29% fuel efficiency increase. So all we're doing is trying to keep up with things. We're not. It's not like we're building a golden goose here. So. Okay, now this is one of the last myths. It is the last myth, and we talk about this all the time. And I'm going to give you some specific examples by using my little cursor here. But I want you to focus on these white counties, as far as the counties that were green, that are collecting the minimum amount of gas tax in their counties. And then you can see when they're next to a yellow county, which is in the maximum. So there can be as much as 6 cents. So if you look at places like Leon and Gadsden, and you look at those counties, they're not all labeled, but we know where those areas are. And you look at these, and the gas prices are very similar, either the same, or I've even found some instances where gas prices are higher, even though the gas taxes collected are lower. And so what this is reflecting is that market pressures are what's assigning gas prices, not taxes. And so another prime example is the Tampa, St. Pete area. Hillsborough, Pinellas collect, as you can see, they're down in the 7 cent. Pasco is at 12 cents, yet they pay really the identical amount as far as prices, and they're paying low prices. And that's because of the Port of Tampa, probably. It's because of some market forces. Same thing, let's look again at the northeast part of the state, Nassau versus Baker. Again, they pay the same amount in market prices, even though they are Baker is leaving about 5 cents on the table. Now, this is a rural county. They could access that and improve their infrastructure and help bring in revenue for their economy as well. Same thing, again, with you look at Seminole versus Volusia, or you can even look at, Seminole versus Volusia is a great example. Osceola, Orange County, some of these. So these are areas that we think are really prime areas for leveraging the unimposed gas taxes to help our infrastructure that is, in some instances, in dire need. Okay, now that impact of indexing state fuel tax, one of the arguments that I've heard, and maybe we get some discussion on this, is that some of the legislators have personally told me that they're not in favor of indexing. And the one big reason is because if you look at that last slide, that there's unimposed gas tax there, and there's counties not using that. And so why would we index the taxes? And that's one of the things. So if you look at this, indexing those local gas taxes has become critical, but also getting a chance to look at those untapped fuel taxes, which will provide more protection and protect our taxpayers from those hidden costs. We went through those hidden costs. It's thousands and thousands of dollars versus, 20 bucks, 25 bucks, 30 bucks, that they might see in the increased gas taxes, that unimposed gas taxes. So that's the one critical thing. We want to leave some time for more discussions as well. I think that's about all that I had, Ramon. Let's see what that next slide has. Yes. Okay. Special thanks, Ramon. We want to thank NACE and FACERS and ICG and NACO, and I'm here for FPPC. Obviously, John, has been great as our FACERS liaison. Eric, what do you think of questions or discussions that we should have?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. I think you had a slide up there, Ramon, that showed and compared the amount of additional revenues the state received in a single year based on indexing versus if it did not index.
Oh, that's that last one. Go back the other way.
Yeah.
Forward one.
No, I think you had it.
Yeah, there it is.
So,
yep.
Obviously, that's an easy calculation. Has anyone looked at, and whatever year they started that, I don't know if it was 96 and they changed the base rate for the tax. Has anyone done a look back on what, if counties had to index their fuel tax, what additional revenues would have been generated? Has anyone done that analysis?
We tried to do that, Eric, back in 2016, and we were able to do it because the primer used to have more information. I think for whatever reason, that information got dropped off. When we did it originally, it was a couple $100 million, on an average year. That calculation shifts, and for whatever reason, Florida, whether it's Department of Revenue or someone, is no longer calculating that, or at least not sharing it. But I think it's definitely something that we could, try to find that information and find a way to do it.
Let me just check the chat. I was going to ask.
Eric, before you continue, if I can build on what Chris just said, I actually had a conversation this morning with DOT up in Tallahassee, a gentleman that has helped prepare the primer for the past few years. And he gave me actually a website in the EDR website where we can actually go back to 1997 or so and get the amount that the state portion of the gas tax went up. So based on that, we could then get the percentage, but he really said, I don't think there's a location where you can actually get the actual percentage. But that's one thing that Chris and I were talking about yesterday, that would be something that might be a good idea to have more data to provide to legislators and counties and cities as to how much really we are losing and what we have been losing every year. So that's one thing that we really need to try to do.
So let me ask you my sense is that, let me ask you first, is at the federal level, they don't index the fuel tax, correct?
No, they don't.
All right. Have you had conversations with legislators on this? And because I think what you present is very reasonable. Are there those that say, look, I agree with you, but the political pressure to do that, or the political will is not there to do that? Are those that are reasonable and understanding that this is just a small tool in the toolbox, very small fiscal impact on the consumer?
Yes, I know from my perspective, when I've talked to legislators, that the big point is, look, the federal government's not indexing it, so they talk about that, but mostly they talk about the fact that they have a harder time getting to it when there's unimposed gas taxes or money on the table. Eric, is what I've been told, is there's money on the table, and so if we index it, the legislators are kind of, involving themselves in local politics when those local, governments haven't made their own decisions to impose all of what's available to them.
Has there ever been a suggestion that you let that be the trigger? In other words, you don't get to index your fuel tax until you hit all 12 cents, which I think
that's a reasonable compromise. Yeah.
I mean, that might drive the Retail Federation crazy because you're going to have different sort of collection rates, but
they already do, though. They already have other collection rates. I agree. I think there should be some middle ground here. I think what we're facing is an avalanche, in the next 10 years of both electric vehicle adoption, MPG increases, and inflationary pressure. Certainly, construction costs, labor costs. I mean, counties can't find, people to inspect projects, and contractors like ourselves, we can't hire people. So prices are going up, and it's biting into our purchasing power. So I think we do have to look at some other ways to get it over the hump.
Chris, I know you've talked about this at conferences, and that there's also going to have to be an impact, not just on obviously fuel efficient cars, electric vehicles, but really we have a new generation that aren't really interested in getting their licenses. And so you have this whole new ride sharing generation coming up. Is there anyone looking at that in terms of a reduction? I mean, obviously you got less cars on the road, which is good, but you also have, 4 millennials getting in a car, and you're not collecting as much gas tax as you would with 4 vehicles on the road.
It's a great point. And I also hear people talk about autonomous vehicles because, those are coming. And if you look at the impact, what that likely means is that that will alleviate some congestion. Ride sharing means there's fewer vehicles. They're still burning the gas. So we're still getting that revenue. But one of the things that we have to look at is once things kind of move to that autonomous, and a lot of these autonomous vehicles are also electric, are we losing revenue? But one thing that we are gaining potentially is less need for capacity improvements. So it might be that we need to loosen up the restrictions on some of the gas tax to allow for more preventive maintenance or more resurfacing and not focus all this money on capital improvements. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned the Elms Nickel, and it's got restrictions on operation and maintenance, and I don't know what the appropriate wedge is for that to get the legislature to change that, and it's only a small little change.
Right.
That the Elms Nickel that 1 through 5 was in response to growth management and the need for capital infrastructure and concurrency, but they didn't allow it for operation and maintenance. Have you had any discussions with legislators about why not just expanding the use of that, given what the real needs are?
I haven't personally. It got so, it always seemed to gravitate back towards this raising taxes. And so I think there would be some opportunities there, but I think that issue was kind of mired in because we were presenting, kind of indexing, and that got lumped into, raising taxes, that it kind of gets sucked into the void somewhat. I'm not sure if Ramon has had, similar situations.
Actually, what's interesting is every year there's a publication that goes out as to what states have increased their gas tax. And for X or Y reason, that publication always has Florida in there. Because again, even the portion of the fuel tax that is indexed because of the state, the publications and everybody else says that's a gas tax increase.
Right.
So that actually has hurt Florida, not only for locals here in the state of Florida, but when we were talking up in DC with legislators like Micah or Rubio and all the others that are out there from the delegation of Florida, they always bring that up. Well, Florida has been doing gas increases every year. How come you guys are still wanting for more funding? So that's something that has been an issue. Indexing, it's basically keeping up with inflation. It's not a gas tax increase. And that's something that we really need to work on and try to educate our legislatures and our delegations a little bit more. Actually, Eric, there was a question in the box here about putting together like a fact sheet to be able to talk to legislators a little bit about indexing and the need for tax. Do you know if FAC has ever put something like that together?
Many times. Still have them, and we can provide it. We can update it. We've got that.
Yep.
We're still under an hour. Just got a couple of minutes, and maybe we can just talk about a couple of things quickly. So, if our audience is counties, we've got county commissioners, elected officials, and administrative types. There's been resistance to indexing, but certainly there are those outside of county government that would benefit from this, right? So there's the development community, road builders, local chambers of commerce. What would you suggest that they do to try to highlight this issue and try to build a coalition of support?
Chris, you want to take that one?
Sure. I think because I've spoken to like the Asphalt Contractors Association and explained it to them and talked to other contractors. And I think the biggest thing is for both elected officials and citizens and the kind of the business environment the business, leaders to have these open discussions and at least, begin the conversation. A lot of folks, don't understand, kind of the mechanisms. They assume that, gosh, look at all this gas tax money, how much gas tax, is going to the roads. And so I think there's just a general misunderstanding of how little that is. I used my, this is a previous presentation, but I used my cell phone bill. And I showed that if I equated that to gas tax, imagine that with the roadway network, I have the unlimited plan. So I can use any of the 8 million lane miles of road in the United States. And what that equates to is less than the data plan on my cell phone bill. And that's what I'm paying, on a monthly basis. And so, we take that for granted, and we say, well, we're paying all this, tax money, and the residents are getting, killed with it. What they're really getting killed with is sitting for 71 hours in traffic. I mean, that's going to cost a lot more than the amount, the nickel here, penny there. But I think we're missing that opportunity to have that discussion. That how much repair bills on their vehicles or damage to the environment, is costing us.
Exactly. Well then, guys, I think we're going to wrap up here. What I would love to do is bring you back at another time. I had some other questions, but I think they would steer off topic of what we really wanted to talk today about was gas tax indexing. Bring you guys back on and just talk about alternatives at the local level, talking about impact fees and some of these other mobility fees and sort of tools in the toolbox that are other than gas tax indexing. So this issue is going to be brought up at our policy committee next week in Palm Beach. This is an issue that we have supported for years and years. It kind of ebbs and flows, but we brought it back. I think, if you throw enough mud on the wall, eventually some sticks. We have new legislators. So I think it's a good time to bring it back up for discussion. So for those that are on the webcast, I know there were questions about posting the slides. Yes, we're going to post those. The video is going to be edited at a later time, and so we'll archive that if you want to refer that to somebody. And I think there was one last question in the chat before we close it down, and I'll just check. Yeah, someone asked, can we have a session to brainstorm ideas addressing EV and hybrid and loss of gas tax? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So anyway, Chris, Ramon, appreciate all the stuff that you guys do for us. Hope to see you in Palm Beach and hope to bring you back on. So thanks again for your time today. It was a great presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anytime we can help. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And I will be in Palm Beach the first day. Unfortunately, I cannot be there on the second day, but I'll be there on the first day.
See you then.